lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
And a half-second lead. Oh, with the sizzling car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive, massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Spanish Grand Prix from Catalonia in Spain. It's round number 6 of the championship. Lewis Wedding leads the way. My name's Stairs. The belt you heard in the background was... Oh, you didn't hear it because I haven't enabled the sound of my co-commentator yet. Now I have. His name is Mad Bird and he joins us from live from Ascot Park. How are you?
Not sure I appreciate you giving away the suburb.
Oh, sorry.
But regardless, I'm good, Stairs. How about you?
I said Royal Ascot, didn't I?
No. Anyways, yes, we're here in Catalonia, the 2003 layout, which doesn't have that chicane at the end. So you got some very fast corners there at the end onto the straight, which should make it a little bit more interesting. We're not sure if we've got 35 minutes left in practice or not. But currently we've got 7 cars in the server and we've got another one slowly working his way in.
Yes, normally the Thursday night running does actually kick off at about 8:30 and we're having a little bit of existential dread as we wonder whether we've actually started the broadcast 30 minutes too early. But nonetheless, Lewis Wedding is leading the championship by some margin, isn't he, Mad Bird?
He absolutely is. 4 wins on the trot at Brazil, Argentina. Oh, what was San
Marino. It was
San Marino. Yes, Imola. Sorry,
you were there?
And Monza. I was there. Not Monza, Monaco even. So 4 wins on the trot, 60 points, which is a 12-point lead over Zirus, who has 4 second places on the trot. Luke Joyner in 3rd with a win in the first round and then sort of fallen off a 5th, a 6th and a 7th and a no-show at Imola with 30 points. In 4th place we've got Nether, who hasn't had any amazing results but has just been consistently there and has been picking up the pieces with a 4th, a 7th, a 5th and a 6th. Andy Simpson showing some decent pace, though he hasn't appeared yet tonight. 3rd place. Good bless you.
Sorry, turn my microphone back on too early.
2 third places with 20 points, which puts him down in 5th. Heath Dixon hasn't been here since we've changed over to Thursday nights, which is a damn shame because he was looking strong with a couple of 4th place finishes. Still in 6th, Robert Dunt in 7th with a 5th and a 4th. Brendan Ross with a 2nd and nothing else. That's enough to put him in 8th. And Ozrob in 9th. And Jamie Snow and Scott Murrell sharing the laurels for 10th with a 3rd place finish each to their names and 10 points. So that is the top 10 there, Stairs.
Yeah, well, since we've got 34 minutes left in the session, we may as well go through the next runners outside the top 10, which is Scott Murrell. We're actually equal on points with Jamie Snow by virtue of having finished 3rd as well, but 2 DNFs alongside his name and hasn't emerged so far. He is Lewis Wedding's teammate in the Williams team. Sam Smith, we had a bunch of runners last round in Monaco who just showed up for the one race by the looks of it. Sam Smith, Steve Bolger and Brenton Hobson, who ended up DNFing. We saw he had, what we found out later on was what's going on? Some noises in the background there. Yes, he ran out of space on his hard drive, so he was having to delete stuff off of his hard drive during the race. And around Monaco, that is a very tricky task, and it got the better of him in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something I'd want to be doing. He managed to keep it out of the wall regardless, which is nothing short of incredible.
Well, he made it 2/3 of the way around a lap of Monaco while having the game windowed and deleting stuff from his hard drive, which is yeah, that is rather impressive.
I'm just getting notification that we are actually ticking over to qualifying in about 30 seconds.
Oh,
so
thank
it looks
goodness.
like the serve was open a little bit late. But that means that Xerus, who has just gotten into the server by the looks of it, is going to have exactly not even a lap's worth of practice. Though it is Xerus.
He has been the main threat to Lewis Wedding. If anyone's looking like taking a victory off of Lewis Wedding, it is probably going to be Xerus or Andy Simpson, who is also not here. But Xerus will be joining us for the race, even though he has yet to put a time in practice, so he will be somewhat on the back foot.
Indeed, we've just ticked over to qualifying, so it'll be on the spot a little bit. Here's Xerus, sorry, that rum and coke is coming back on me. As it looks like we've lost someone. Jaden Draper's dropped out of the game, so hopefully he comes back because he had some pretty strong pace up there in second provisional.
Well, that looks pretty bad because we're in the qualifying session, and you know what the rule is. If you're not in the server when qualifying session starts, then you don't get to qualify, and if Draper does make it back for the race, he'll be starting from the back of the grid.
Yeah, it's a shame. Hopefully that's not a technical issue that's caused that to happen, because that'd be a damn shame there for Drake. We're just waiting for something to occur here.
The session to start is probably the thing that we're waiting for to occur.
There it goes.
But funnily enough, there's no one at the end of the pit lane, even though we have started this qualifying session. So a remarkably silent start to qualifying. One of the Ferraris making its way out now, and
Dwayne Davies getting out there.
Dwayne Davies, and also the McLaren there, which I believe is being driven by Matt Williams. So
Correct.
Matt Williams, who is a bit of a stranger to finishing these races, but certainly pretty good at starting them. We know that he makes up a lot of positions off the start, as Dwayne Davies pays not the slightest bit of notice of the pit exit line, but I guess in qualifying that's all right if there's no one coming down the main straight.
Yeah, just getting a notification here from Andy Simpson. Can't make it tonight because he's getting back from Winton late. Wishes everyone luck, which I'm sure they all appreciate, though we are going to slightly less appreciate not having him in the race, sort of spicing it up a little.
Yes, that is a damn shame. I guess you can already sort of count us as about a third of the way into the race with the number of cars left in the race, but we haven't had those early laps for the cars to drop out yet. But nonetheless, we're on the start of our qualifying session with Dwayne Davies just making his way down to turn number 10. And this final sequence of corners is slightly different to what we see now in a modern Formula 1, as we alluded to before. The Mickey Mouse chicane just after this bit here, not present, thankfully, because we get this fantastic, very, very fast final corner. They'll turn 14 and 13 and 14, pair of incredibly quick right-handers, and we're just going to jump on board now with Dwayne Davies as he sets the first lap in this qualifying session.
I bet he's hoping it's going to be the fastest lap in this qualifying session, though Wedding has just come out of the pits directly in front of him, which might throw him off a tiny bit. Hopefully, if he does catch up, it looks like he's crabbing across the track, going around that long right-hand third corner.
He just got a bit of understeer there. I wonder if that was from the dirty air of the car ahead of him, which is Lewis Wedding. Still quite a fair way away, but the aero can be disturbed, and down into this part of the track, which is potentially an overtaking zone, the turn 5 corner, and then up the hill around this very quick turn 7 and 8. Very, very fast sequence of corners, and then blind apex around the top of turn 9, and very, very important corner as well, because it leads onto this straight in the middle sector down to turn number 11, 10 beg your pardon, and another very, very strong overtaking opportunity. Quick change of direction here, back up the hill towards turn 13 out of 12, sequence of double right-handers, and back down the hill And this is the part where in MotoGP we saw Jorge Lorenzo and Valentino Rossi exchanging positions on the final lap of the race back in 2009. So probably not quite as much of an overtaking opportunity in Formula One, but nonetheless still an exhilarating sequence of corners.
Yeah, good opportunity to get a toe coming out of that corner as well. Whereas in the more modern format of the track, that chicane, you can't follow someone too closely through there, so it's very easy to drop off the back of someone who you've been on the back of the entire rest of the lap. So it can be a bit frustrating. Just got Ozrob in the chat saying that he sold too many tyres today, and so had a late finish.
Is that so? He's too tired. Lewis Wedding was fastest man in the first sector by about 1 second over Dwayne Davies. Dwayne Davies did a 22.7 in the first sector, 21.7 from Lewis Wedding, and again it goes purple by some margin in the middle sector. Two seconds up on the provisional pole sitter Dwayne Davies. Yeah,
so Lewis stamping his authority as he has at all of the...
Oh! He's recovered that somehow. It looked a bit laggy, but had a huge moment there coming out of the penultimate corner, but still manages to set the fastest lap by 3.5 seconds.
3.5 seconds exactly. That's nice. Yeah, he's been very... these cars must just match him because he's been very quick in all of them, and we are experiencing some lag by the looks of it because his car is travelling in directions that do not appear to be accurate.
Yes, so obviously we're struggling with just the sheer volume of drivers in this server, all 7 of them. Just slightly more than a US Grand Prix from about 13 or 14 years ago, but with Goodyear tyres instead of Michelins and Bridgestones.
Yeah, not going to explode these ones.
Matt Williams goes 3rd and is on track for a PB as well.
I'm sure if they were going to explode, then the Spanish authorities would be much more open to altering the last corner or wherever the issue happened to be.
I'm sure there would be a Spanish Inquisition after the fact, though, as Xeris comes out of the pits.
After they had notified the Inquisities? Is that the term for someone who is being inquisitioned?
No, I very much doubt it. Oh.
You win me.
Fuck.
Lewis Wedding has abandoned back to pits because he came across the line. Still bettered his time.
Quite some.
By
4/10.
4/10.
Christ.
But he was going to be stuck up behind Luke Joyner for the entire lap, so I think he decided, nah, not worth it.
Good choice. Xeris has gone 4th in what are, for all intents and purposes, exploratory laps. His first real laps in anger around this circuit, having not done any practice. So this is going to be interesting to see how long it takes him to get up to speed.
He is a very natural driver. He usually doesn't need too much practice in the cars, just rocks up and, much to the chagrin of everyone else, is pretty much straight away on the pace. So I imagine he'll work his way into this pretty quickly, but he does only have 8 minutes left.
Yes, we are already nearing the halfway point in this qualifying session, and Xeris having done 5 of his allotted 12 laps, now 6, and that of course means that he has 6 remaining.
Yeah, I think he's just treating this more as a truncated practice session rather than actually trying to set the world on fire with his lap times, which honestly is probably a smart idea. Just get some consistency on the track, and then knowing how the fields in the 97 Formula 1 races tend to go, he'll probably find himself up in 2nd place by the end of the first lap.
Yes, well, it's probably one of the smallest turnouts we've had in this particular series, which is rather disappointing. And given the attritional races that we've had in AMS as of late, they are seriously threatening the integrity of my hair. But nonetheless, clumps of hair in the shower aside, Xeris has improved on this lap by 2 seconds, coming towards the final sector of the lap.
Yeah, he's zeroing that in nicely, I'd say. He's going to find himself up in second place fairly easily if he manages to take this last corner without any issues, and it looks as if he has.
Yeah, well, he's probably 3 seconds behind Dwayne Davies at the moment, so he still slots in behind him, but not by a lot, 0.3 of a second separating Davies and Xeris.
Yeah, quite close. Thought that he might have gained that little bit in the last sector, but I guess there's not too much technique in the last sector. It's basically just put your foot down and go through those last couple of corners as fast as you can. That long right-hand turn 3 is going to be one to watch in the race, I think, because I've seen...
Oh, Dwayne's round! Dwayne has spun the car, and I'm just trying to pick up where that is. He's back in the pits now, and he was on a PB time before that.
That's a damn shame. I think he was just coming out of turn 4, by the looks of it.
Desperate luck. Desperate luck. So, Ferrari... The only car, or the only team represented by 2 drivers tonight, Dwayne Davies being the first one, and the only other race winner in this category other than Lewis Wedding, Luke Joyner driving the other one, currently sat in 5th place, ahead of Neber, who's just looking to score points today. Hasn't really got to grips with these F1 cars. He's certainly come to pace in the Porsche series that we saw him finish 2nd in last Thursday, but with the Formula 1... He's just struggling with setup, struggling with drivability, and is basically just looking to score the points. And he has been consistently doing that each round.
Yeah, Xeris he's worked his way up into 2nd place. He's still 4 seconds down on Lewis, but looking at it, it appears that he's actually on the hard tyres, which we know he likes, despite them being not the faster tyres. And he is also probably running a full tank of fuel, if I'd know Xeris. So that time probably not representative of how it's actually going to be in the race itself.
Probably wouldn't be running a full tank of fuel in qualifying, though. I mean, I know he probably wants to get used to the car in race trim, but he'd still want to qualify with the lowest fuel load possible. But having said that, he's going to be quite comfortably going 2nd again. He's 5/10 up on his best as it stands. And Dwayne Davies in the pits at the moment.
Yeah, he's just edging that gap down ever so slightly.
Edging.
As I was saying before, turn 3, I reckon, I've seen a bunch of people losing it going around that corner, oversteering as you come around that long right-hand uphill bend. And so I think that's one that's going to claim a couple of victims tonight.
Oh, and it will. It will. When the tyres get old, that is going to be disastrous. Thankfully, there is a lot of runoff here, and so that may well just keep some of these guys in the race for a bit longer. It looks like to me that Lewis Wedding's hung up the boots and said, go on, beat that, and has not seen the necessity to set any more laps.
Potentially been called out to get donuts. We know that has happened before, but hopefully not.
Yes, hasn't happened for a while. Maybe he could arrange into some sort of sponsorship agreement with Matt Williams, title sponsor for the Porsche Cup, driving the car resembling a Krispy Kreme donut packet last Thursday.
How interesting.
I thought so.
I think I'm going to need another drink for this race there. I'm reliably informed that Xeris's bum hurts.
Oh, okay.
Thumb. Just issues with the radio.
Bit different.
Communication down there. Yeah, his thumb hurts.
Just 0.2 of a second separating Luke Joyner and Gary Neville. Gary Neville driving the number 15, which is a Prost Mugen Honda, if I'm not mistaken. He's not on the track at the moment, but Luke Joyner is on the track and was faster in the first sector than he had set all qualifying sessions. So looking to improve, and Gary Neville not there to respond.
It's a pretty quick lap around here, just a minute and 20 odd seconds. Luke Joyner up by a second on his PB, so you're right there.
That's a huge improvement. So Luke Joyner going quicker and quicker.
Unfortunately, Matt Williams is 1.9 seconds ahead of him, so unless he has a absolutely ripping last sector, which it doesn't look like he has, he's not nailed either of those two very fast corners, he is still going to remain in 5th, and indeed he does.
Yeah, he lost
trimmed
time.
that by 8/10.
Lost time on the final sector, but he will have another opportunity if he does indeed have the fuel. Matt Williams, you saw in the background, just coming out of the pit lane to cement his place. He's a little bit in no man's land there, and Luke Joyner's jumped out of that one. Gary Neville has taken to the circuit in his beautiful Prost Mugen Honda with the big sponsorship and many others. It's funny because it looks like it's been coloured in with a big pen.
It does. It looks as if it's been scribbled in a margin.
Or you could also buy a cigarette lighter from Bic and light your Gauloise, however you pronounce that.
Oh, Gary's gone off at
we'll
turn
move on.
5.
Nether appears to have an 8-second improvement on this lap, which will put him right in the thick of that battle over 5th and 6th place. So Nether setting his first representative lap time from a pace point of view by the looks of it. And let's see how he finishes off the lap.
Yeah, he's just had a messy qualifying session, I think, as Nether, but he's managed to get up in the 5th at the last gasp. Very well done with a 10-second improvement. Yeah,
so obviously didn't quite get the lap together prior to that, but as soon as he did, he jumped 2 spots, and not that far off Matt Williams in the grand scheme of things, considering just how big some of the margins can be. 8/10 isn't actually that much, considering the gains that you can find around this track in these cars.
And knowing Matt Williams' history with finishing these races, Nether would probably be looking at this as a provisional 4th.
Potentially. His record so far is a bit all over the place. 4th, 7th, 5th and 6th. And he actually crossed the line 3rd in Brazil, and if it wasn't for an unfortunate penalty, he would have got his first podium of the series there. But I wouldn't discount Nether for a podium tonight. Keeps his nose clean, and there's some attrition. We certainly have seen attrition in these races from the likes of Dwayne Davies and Matt Williams, who between them have just trying to see how many races they've finished between them. None in this series. So, I mean, if history is any indicator, then Nether is primed to take that 3rd spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, he's sort of just been keeping his nose clean, not setting the world on fire with his results, but, you know, something that I think a lot of AMS Oz drivers discount is the old adage of to finish first you must finish, and a lot of people just chuck the hat in as soon as something doesn't go their way. They spin out maybe, and then we end up with situations like we did at Bathurst, where we had 3 cars finishing the race, as Matt Williams has just had an almighty accident.
Oh, that's after he finished qualifying. And Gary Neville's the last man to cross the line. He doesn't improve, but Matt Williams did find quite a bit of time on his final flying lap. But given how far behind Dwayne Davies he was, he didn't actually improve his position despite a marked increase in his, or decrease I should say, in his lap time, about a second and a half.
Potentially why he flung himself into the wall at incredibly high speed. I know the feeling of gaining a bunch of time and just not thinking there's any way you could wring any more time out of that lap, and you still fall short. It's incredibly frustrating.
I can imagine. Well, I know the feeling myself, but nonetheless, the drivers have now gone through into their warm-up session, all 7 of them, and we hope that becomes 8 with Jaden Draper having been pretty quick in practice. We certainly hope he can make the race, but we're going to take a quick break, and then afterwards an exercise in futility. We'll be predicting the winner.
Absolutely, I look forward to it.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
It's lights out and away we go. It's a great start from Sebastian Vettel.
Win come up the inside. McLaughlin gets it. They run, but the Red Bull Racing man has got through. The champion's done the job. They're all gone. They're all gone. Tander's off. McLaughlin's off.
Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 17 three-time champ, Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Welcome back. Good to have your company wherever you're watching, all around the world, or indeed the country. The country is part of the world, so that's a needless statement. But we are in Spain today for the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's get rid of that. The Spanish Grand Prix, which is round 6 of the F1 1997 season, following the season as we went in real life, through visiting all the circuits in their respective versions as they were in 1997. Of course, that particular championship being contested most closely by Jacques Villeneuve and Michael Schumacher, eventually culminating in the final race in Jerez with it has to be said, a controversial incident which saw Michael Schumacher disqualified from the entire season. So we certainly hope that we don't have anything quite as dramatic in this season, but it would be nice to see it go down to the final race.
It would, and yeah, hopefully Lewis doesn't try to, crash Zerus off the road at that particular right-hand corner that I can't remember the name, or any other characteristics.
Well, it was right hand. So Luke Joyner currently on the track. And from the looks of our timing screens, there is one other, and that is Zerus, who's looking to get a little bit more practice in that he didn't manage to during the practice session. He joined late during the qualifying session, and so this is serving as his practice as it stands. He was a ways off Lewis Wedding, but was fast enough to get up into second place, so he's got the race to think about that. And just 7 cars in this race, so a lot of points on offer for those who finish.
Yeah, definitely. And it would be worth, if you're in one of those positions that you are scrambling over points, to finish the race, even if you do have a bit of damage or maybe spin out and you're off the back of the pack. Just even if you just poodle around the last few laps, and just bank those few points. Especially if you're someone like Nether, who's he's not really in the championship hunt, but he's looking at a good result if he continues to just sort of pack away points as he has been doing. So hopefully some extra points coming tonight for Nether with less competitors.
That's right. He's currently sat in 4th place in the championship there, just 7 points adrift of Luke Joyner, the previous race winner or previous championship leader, prior to Lewis Wedding taking over. With 4 wins on the bounce. Luke Joyner, his other results, 5th, the 6th and the 7th, wasn't around in San Marino, and Nether, after being one of the multitude of retirements in the first round at Albert Park, has got a string of points finishes since then. Just 3 points ahead of Andy Simpson, the relative newbie. He joined us in Brazil with a DNF, and then sat Argentina out in round 3, came back in San Marino and Monaco, finished 3rd on both occasions, but that certainly doesn't tell the whole story. He was in contention for the win of both of those races at some stage with the pace he had. Yeah, just a little bit
uncoordinated, I'd describe his racing. He just had a lot of pace, but just a couple of little errors that the other guys squabbling for the lead didn't make. So. And costly errors as well, just like losing it up at the casino corners in Monaco and at Acqua Minerale in Imola, and just a lot of time lost for risks that he didn't really need to be taking, considering where he was at those points in the race.
But it can be argued, I suppose, that he got himself into those positions because he was taking such risks, but probably wasn't picking the right moments to go full attack, just because he was going full attack through 100% of the race.
Yeah, as a driver we know likes to say, you do have to leave a margin for error with your racing, and have something in the bank to fall back on if something does happen. So those are wise words, though we do mock them fairly frequently. It's always a good idea to drive within yourself at least a little bit, as Dwayne Davies doesn't do that after coming out of the pits and loses it.
Gracious me. Might just catch a replay of that and see what exactly led to the images you were seeing prior to this replay. Coming down to turn 1 and just grabbing a little bit of curb there. That wasn't the issue though, it was the next corner. The change of direction caught him out. Dwayne Davies, the number 6, and Luke Joyner, the number 5, so that may well help you distinguish between the two Ferraris tonight. We're going to get your predictions, Madbird. It seems like we kind of say this every race, that the obvious answer is to go with Lewis Wedding, but do you think anyone can stop him today?
Unfortunately, no. I think that it'll be a pretty unopposed victory, especially with Xeris not having the practice he usually would have. I guess there's always the race to happen, so Lewis could lose it somewhere. We know he isn't a perfect driver. He does make mistakes occasionally, so and Catalunya is a track that can punish those mistakes pretty heftily if you go off at the wrong points. So it's by no means a foregone conclusion.
Oh! Lewis Wedding testing the limits of the circuit there. You obviously weren't watching him like I was, but finding where the limit of grip is out the final corner and putting it in the wall, which I don't expect him to do in the race.
Well, that's one of those things that could happen that would make my prediction not accurate, but I'm going to call Lewis first, Xeris second, and I'm going to call Nether for a surprise podium. I know I did it last week and it didn't happen, but not last week, but out at Monaco, and it didn't happen, but I think the drivers ahead of him, I think he can cover them off, or they'll crash out of the race, and he'll find himself in 3rd place by the end.
I tend to agree with you there. I think that is a solid choice. Of course, if that was going to be the foregone conclusion, then we wouldn't hold the race and we'd just put it in the books right now. But that's why we have sport. We hold these events so that we can be proven wrong. And just a minute and 45 separates us from the answer to that question.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey that sentence took us on.
Yeah, I liked it.
What are your predictions, Stairs?
Oh,
just to...
no, yeah. Well, that was that journey of a sentence that you obviously weren't really listening to was basically me saying I agree with you.
I was listening. It just I sort of, you know, when you're watching a particularly long movie, and you are interested, but like, you know, the movie's just gone on for so long that your mind can't help but wander to other things, like what am I going to make for dinner tomorrow? You know,
tomorrow.
Do I have enough condoms for the week?
Yeah,
and
I mean, like,
all that
Coles is just down the road. And your mum bought all those other ones that are probably a bit out of date now, but...
Oh no, they got a. I'm told they have a 20-year lifespan.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure I'd want to test that though. We got 30 seconds left in warm-up, Stairs. Getting very. I'm attempting to get myself pumped.
Oh yes. I got scraping the bottom of the word barrel.
I've got myself a rum and coke.
Oh yes.
I've got myself some French fries, and I'm ready to watch some racing around Catalunya, Stairs.
Good to see a lot of drivers practicing their pit entries during this warm-up session. It's a crucial part of the race. People coming in to change their tyres and fuel. All the other drivers with their pumped-up tyres. I don't know. I thought
better run. Scruff has been, or Matt Williams, sorry, has been doing a lot of practice starts this lap. He's stopped about every time there's been a flat bit of track, and lit his rear tyres up as he's streaked away. So
to be fair,
him to have a decent.
I don't think that's what he needs practice at. He's pretty good at starts. It's the avoiding other drivers. I think he needs to have have a bit more practice at. Having said that, he probably has been on the
Jaden Draper is in. Sorry to cut across you. Jaden Draper is in, and we'll be starting from the rear.
Definitely couldn't have waited till I finished my sentence. But Jaden Draper in, good to see him. Just to say, Matt Williams probably been on the receiving end of a few bits of bad luck when it comes to opening lap incidents.
He has been, but he's also been the victim of, as I was saying before, the sort of tendency to go and just chuck your hands up as soon as something goes wrong and just not bother to finish the race. And he could probably have some decent point hauls if he'd stuck it out a couple of the races that he's chucked in the hat. So hopefully he sticks around tonight. Points
go down to 10th place in this series, and with only 8 runners, means you even if you finish last, and the prerequisite for that is actually finishing, you still get 3 points. 15 for a win, 12 for second place, 10th for third, and then down in 2-point increments down to 5th place, where it goes down to 1-point increments as the cars have started to make their way around the warm-up laps. So let's take you quickly through the grid. Lewis Wedding, in a class of his own, starts from pole position from what I believe is the 5th time in a row. I'm not quite sure if he had pole in Monaco. I think that might have been Andy Simpson. So at least 4 pole positions for him this season. Ziris starts in 2nd place, a place he seems to be quite familiar with in this series, and looking to go one better for the win sooner rather than later, I would imagine. Whether tonight is that night remains to be seen. Starting in 3rd place is Dwayne Davies, the lead Ferrari driver, and he's been pretty good in qualifying sessions lately. And he actually won in the TCC series on Monday in the first race, a race that was shortened by a server disconnection, or actually a power failure, I believe, on the server side, something we know about all too well, Madbird. Behind Dwayne Davies is Matt Williams, starting in the McLaren Mercedes. Absolute classic of a car, that one. And for all the jesting that we've been doing today, I hope he finishes the race. Nether starting out of 5th place, and he is a man who is inclined to finish a race or two. Very, very consistent. Behind him, Luke Joyner in the 2nd Ferrari. What can he do? From 6th place, and Gary Neville in the Prost Mugen Honda starting in 7th place, with Jaden Draper, who was for a time the fastest man in the practice session but didn't make qualifying, and as such starts from the rear of the field.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Jaden make his way up through the field. Based on the practice, he did have a lot more pace than most of the runners out there. I don't think he was on Lewis's level or possibly Zeris's level. Didn't get to compare them directly, but he definitely was faster than a few of the guys ahead of him, so he'll be scything his way up during the first lap, I imagine.
That he will.
Lewis has overshot his a little bit.
And he's gone back a little bit too far. I think he's overcompensated there. It's tricky. You can't.
Something I'm familiar with.
You can't see the. What's going on with Jaden Draper?
Yeah.
Looks like he must have had his game windowed or something. He's just sort of very slowly drove off the road there. So I wonder if he was not fixing something up in Windows. But we're about to get going here in Spain for 33 laps. Here in Spain, a bit of wheel spin, and it's a pretty good start for Zeris. Lewis Wedding on the outside with the preferred line, and Nether with a fantastic start up into 3rd place. So great job. Dwayne Davies went absolutely nowhere and is back to last place.
Good Lord, yeah, and he looks as if he's actually starting from the pit lane as Dwayne Davies, so possibly didn't get out in.
Oh, that was Luke Joyner, yeah, beg your pardon.
Didn't get out in time. Jaden Draper already up to 5th place, did an amazing pass, got a much better start than Luke Joyner.
Matt Williams up the inside of Nether here, Nether sees him coming, gives him the room.
Yeah, Jaden Draper just waiting at the back of these two as well. He's done very well to get himself up there, although he's had a punt from Luke Joyner.
Luke Joyner's off. Oh, Jaden Draper stuck in the gravel trap. Let's try and catch a replay of that. Didn't look pretty good. It didn't look very good for both of them. And Luke Joyner, let's go on board and see if he is at fault for that one. Joyner was slow off the previous corner, and you've got to put that one on Luke Joyner, I think, 100%. Now, the question is, has Jaden Draper managed to get out of the sand trap? And the answer is, no, he has not.
No, he has not. He has DNF'd not even half distance through the first lap, so that is... It's after he managed to get back into the server and get himself up into 5th place by turn 4, sorry, to be taken out of turn 5. That must be incredibly frustrating there for the Minardi Hut.
And Matt Williams with a bit of pace once he got past Never, he's basically said see you later and has got some clear air now, so it's up to him to see if he can run some consistent pace, and he's in a very strong position for a podium finish tonight to dispel all of the criticisms that we've had for him tonight. And to be fair, he hasn't really put a wheel wrong tonight. It's, oh, and as I say it, I've just given him the curse. Spins around, spin, 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 back on the track, back to 4th, Nether moves up to 3rd place.
In fact, it's going to become 6th in a second as Gary Neville has just lapped him and gotten himself up into 4th. So Nether back in the podium places, and yeah, I think you did the good old commentator's curse.
I don't think I've done it any worse than that to any single driver in AMS Oz history.
To be honest, I was waiting for it. As you were singing his praises, I was watching him coming around that corner I was talking about in qualifying that I said would claim a couple of victims, and I saw those tyres start to slide, and then he couldn't get a hold of it. So, unfortunately, I think we put that blame 100% on your head, Steph.
Yeah, I certainly can't blame Matt Williams for that. That was all on me. But he's putting Gary Neville here under a significant amount of pressure in that Prost-Mugen Honda. He'll be pretty happy with where he is at this stage of the race in 4th place. Luke Joyner's about 3 seconds behind, ready to pick up any scraps, but this is the closest battle on the track, with Lewis Wedding already eking out a 3.5 second advantage over Xeris and setting the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, Xeris a little bit under the weather as well, so not going to be at his best, and with incredibly little practice and no strategy, and a very different strategy. He's got the hard tyres on, obviously, which we know he prefers compared to Lewis's softs.
I don't know if it's a matter of preference or just that he can't make the tyres last as long as Lewis Wedding does, and Lewis Wedding a bit of a magician with those soft tyres and doing things that others can't.
Disappointing for Dwayne Davies to have started from the pit lane after being in 3rd place at the end of qualifying. We've got Matt Williams, sorry to cut across you, just down the inside here at the hairpin, down into the left-hander, and Matt Williams moves up into 4th place. Great racing there. Gary Neville left him the room, and what can Matt Williams now do about that gap to Nether? Is about 2 seconds up the road. Yeah. Off in the air in the background, the Ferrari's off. That's Luke Joyner. Absolutely missed the corner. Don't know what happened there. Let's catch a replay, and we'll go on board with Luke Joyner. It's almost like he completely missed his braking point. Yeah, that's not good for the 2 Ferraris running 6th and 7th out of 7 current runners. So they will not be happy with that start. Dwayne Davies, however, will be slightly happy to see another car. Even if it is his teammate after he's crashed off at a couple of corners ago. So it looks as if he's got damage as well, Joyner. He's
yeah, he hit the wall pretty hard,
particularly smoothly, and he gets out of the way smartly for his teammate.
Team orders from Ferrari, but it makes sense in this context. And Luke Joyner comes into the pit lane. It was actually the rears that he lit up on the curb out of turn 7, and that fired him straight into the wall. So an early pit stop for Luke Joyner, only lap 3. Hopefully he'll be able to get that damage fixed. And with Draper already out of the race, Joyner is in 7th place. So there's still a lot of handy points on offer. So we hope that he can continue and pick up any scraps if anyone else were to DNF. So far the order is Lewis Wedding leading from Xeris, Nether 25 seconds behind, and this is a tasty little battle here with Matt Williams and Gary Neville, not too far behind him. Further 10 seconds back to Dwayne Davies, and then Luke Joyner, I think, just emerging from the pits. In fact, no, he's still in the pits as at the moment getting that damage repaired, so it's a hefty amount of damage on
Lewis
that Ferrari.
Wedding went a little bit wide at the last corner. Thought that it was going to be much messier than it was. He managed to get it back onto the track without losing much time, but he's got to be careful with that, because if he touches that gravel too abruptly, he's going to find himself.
He is going to find himself, and yes, was very lucky to hold that one together. Probably just got out of the throttle and let discretion be the better part of valor in that instance. But at the moment, Matt Williams is reeling in Nether at a fairly significant rate. As they come across the line, it was a 29.2 for Nether, but a 28.1 for Matt Williams. Takes over a second out of Nether, and I feel like Nether's not going to fight this one too hard. When he sees that that McLaren leer up into his mirrors, he'll probably just let him go and hope that he makes another mistake like he did not too long ago.
Yeah, Gary Neville was pressuring Matt Williams pretty aggressively on the last lap, so I wonder if he had a bit of an issue or something to have dropped off almost 2 seconds behind them now, although he is catching. Although, as I say that, I've done a U, and he's outbroke himself straight into the gravel and is now the better part of 5 seconds behind this dueling pair. So, regardless...
Dwayne Davies back into play now. He's just behind now. Blue and red fighting each other, and just up the road we've got blue and black fighting each other.
Yeah, black and blue, just like my...
Oh, that was a bit of a late move. Stuck his nose up the inside, and I think Nether thought that he was a bit too far back to have the move.
Oh, Nether's lost it. Nether's oversteered, coming out of the corner by the looks of it, straight. Probably looking back in his rearview mirror to see what happened.
And look where he's rejoining, right near the other two. He's lost all 3 positions, so back into 6th. So it's all gone from hero to zero in a matter of moments. Let's catch that on board Nether, and yeah, just... I think he got onto the curb a little bit, and very easy to do that. And that has gifted the podium position to Matt Williams. And now Gary Neville is being passed by the Ferrari of Dwayne Davies up into 4th place. Nearly cut him off there. Don't think he was quite as clear as he thought he was. So Matt Williams and Dwayne Davies back in the 3rd and 4th positions where they qualified, except in reverse order, as Dwayne Davies was 3rd in the qualifying session and Matt Williams 4th.
Yeah, I thought that Gary Neville was going to spear into the back of Davies there after he cut back across to retake the racing line. Don't think he, as you say, was quite as in front of the blue Prost-Mugen Honda as he thought he was. But regardless, they've both survived, although he gets a bit of a wiggle there. He's already catching up on Scruff as well. He's cut a couple of tenths out of him in the last 2 corners. With these guys sort of being not really teammates, but you know, they're friendly enough, do you think Scruff is going to argue this one too much, or do you think he'll find the least painful way possible to let Dwayne Davies pass?
No, I don't think he's giving this one up for a fight. This is a podium, and neither of these guys have a podium or indeed a finish in this series so far. But I think Matt Williams, although he might not have an answer for Dwayne Davies when he gets onto him, will still want to fight for it. But look at the run that the Ferrari has down the inside. Matt Williams didn't even have a chance to defend there, and Dwayne Davies, if he can get it stopped under the brakes, is going to go up into 3rd place. This is a hot potato, this 3rd place position, the last place on the podium, and it's swapped a number of times already in this race. And 7 laps in, this isn't quite the action we actually thought we were going to get, so we're being treated to a fantastic battle so far.
It's almost an embarrassment of riches, is this battle for 3rd. 3 podium sitters we've had. Oh, sorry, we've had 6 different podium sitters in the last lap and a half, with Nether, Dwayne Davies, and Matt Williams all having their spot on that 3rd step for a few minutes. Looks as if Luke Joyner has been lapped. He must have come out of the pits. He pit for damage, didn't he?
Yeah, so he's obviously had a very lengthy stop and lets his teammate by, very, very obviously pulling to the inside so as not to impede the progress of Dwayne Davies, who has been on a hot streak of form lately. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast his victory on Monday night, and he appears to be carrying that form through to a potential podium finish tonight here in Spain.
Absolutely. He's already sort of left his teammate behind a little bit. It's a good 4 and a bit seconds back from Dwayne Davies to Matt Williams. So Scruff just no answer to that pace. Ooh. that is.
Oh, but that's sorry. That's the Ferrari of Luke Joyner going over the curbs there.
Me a little bit as well, yeah.
I think Matt Williams had an issue in the... let's see, we're trying to see where that is in the lap. He had a 29.6 on the previous lap around to Dwayne Davies' 24.6, so he's got some sort of issue there that's severely hampering his pace. Actually, having said that, that was only about a second and a half off his best lap of the race. So Dwayne Davies in the 24s is significantly quicker than all those behind him. So it looks like he's where he belongs in from a standpoint of his outright pace tonight.
Nether gaining on Gary Neville slowly. Gary's just had to make his way past Luke Joyner, but Luke appeared to make that incredibly easy for him. So I imagine Nether will be hoping for a similar service when he finds his way up behind that Ferrari. What else have we got? Not much.
No, it does seem to have stretched out. No sooner had we professed how this race was proving us. Oh, it's a bit of a change. Bit of a change. What's going on? Dwayne Davies spun around. Let's catch a replay.
At turn 13, I believe, the first of the fast right-handers
just
oversteered himself.
Got the curb. Clipped the curb on the inside. No damage from his point of view. That'll be a small comfort to him, because it means that given the pace that he was running prior to that, he should be able to catch back up again. But it seesaws the battle back in favour of Matt Williams, who has a 4-second advantage currently over Dwayne Davies. Dwayne Davies only lost the one position in that. You can see Gary Neville there still behind.
Yeah, Gary I think he got a little bit too excited about seeing Dwayne Davies ahead of him. He went very aggressive in the first corner, broke very late, and I think he lost a lot of time. He was about half a second behind at the first corner. He's now 2.5 seconds behind or thereabouts. So you need to keep his head screwed on, does the Mugen Honda driver. And we've got Nether catching up on him very slowly. In fact, so slowly that he's losing time to Gary Neville.
Yeah, so that's the opposite of catching up. But speaking of catching, Matt Williams lost 0.8 of a second in the first sector to Dwayne Davies. So Dwayne Davies has basically forgotten about that spin about a minute ago, and Matt Williams struggling a little bit with that car, a little bit of a twitch into the penultimate corner, and already Dwayne Davies is back on the gearbox.
Yeah, Matt would want to go for the inside, but he's opted not to. He's just going to try to hold that racing line.
At the rate that Dwayne Davies was closing in there, if Matt Williams had gone to the inside, Dwayne Davies would just have driven around the outside. So there was absolutely no stopping that. Like trying to stop the tides with the fork.
Yeah, it's difficult to stop the flow of water with a fork. It's part of why you don't drink soup with a fork.
No.
People tend to find that a spoon is better at holding liquid. Dwayne Davies.
That said, you know, chopsticks are a thing, and apparently the Asians said, "What's the best thing we can eat thousands of something with?" And at the risk of sounding racist, 2 sticks was the option that they chose. And millions and millions, even billions, said, "Yeah, good idea." But nonetheless, Dwayne Davies is clearing off at an alarming rate. If your name is Matt Williams, he's already got a 3-second advantage.
Yeah, he's going to want to do that though, because he is almost 54 seconds behind the second place. If he does have designs on a higher podium step, but I feel as if you know, barring any massive disasters for our first 2 podium runners, those are probably safe at this stage, I would imagine.
One would say so. Gary Neville's about to get lapped by the looks of it, 1 minute 20 behind, and we're on about a 1 minute 22 lap time. So at the rate that the 2 leaders are going, up everywhere up to a 3rd place, he's going to get lapped tonight with a shorter lap than most circuits, and 33 of them, 33 laps, that is, to have an opportunity to catch up.
Sorry, in fact, we have Lewis Wedding in the pits, so Gary Neville's lapping will continue unabated for at least a little bit longer.
Until he comes into the pits, probably.
It appears that Nether has managed to find his way past Gary Neville at some stage, so Gary is now gaining back on Nether, so there might have been an issue or something there And Gary Neville was... he's done that a couple of times, just into... What's that? Turn 3, 4, 5. Into turn 5, he's just locked up his fronts and just skated directly into the gravel. So he'd probably be looking at a higher position. He might be up in 4th at this stage if he hadn't done that. I've seen him done it 3 times, I think, so far in the race, and that's let Nether off the hook a little bit.
Yes, but if is F1 backwards, and of course F1 is what we're watching tonight, not if. So Gary Neville.
No, I mean, is it though? Because that would imply that it's fee, not F1.
But pedantic comments aside, Gary Neville. It looks like F1 backwards. It isn't actually a 1. An I and a 1 could be. No, never mind. But Matt Williams is currently sat in 4th place now, 10 seconds behind Dwayne Davies.
Perhaps it's a Roman numeral.
Yeah, perhaps it's a Roman numeral. We'll let that one go through the keeper though, because Xeris is stayed out for another lap now. I wonder if he's trying to stretch this to a 1 stop. Oh goodness.
Sorry to, I was looking at Lewis Wedding going around those last couple of corners, and I think Lewis was. Oh, and Dwayne Davies is in the wall. Oh, and he's lost a tyre.
Oh, that's it.
He's lost it at turn 7, I think. My quick, yeah, and he's out of the race. He's in the garage.
Our prediction may well still come to fruition, but for the time being, it's Matt Williams who will move up into 3rd place. And now where? Yeah. Oh, that's where his teammate Luke Joyner lost it earlier in the race. Just oversteers straight in, so driving at 100%. Let's catch the onboard for Dwayne Davies. A very dangerous curb that actually was after the curb when he got on the throttle. Still too much steering angle, straight into the wall. And there's no repairing that Ferrari. The front left completely torn off the car. And, I mean, I have to say, it was a fantastic run for Dwayne Davies. He showed excellent pace there. Only, in terms of his fastest lap, about a second slower than... actually, no, only about 0.5 of a second slower than Xeris. And a couple of seconds off Lewis Wedding, who is still in 2nd place because Xeris has yet to pit. And he hasn't come in this lap. Looks like he might be trying to stretch this to a 1 stop here, Madbird.
Yeah, looks like it. He is on the hard tyres, which will last longer. So very potentially trying to stretch that one out as long as he can. He's got a 15.5 second advantage over Lewis Wedding, but Lewis is pumping in some hot laps. So
isn't he just?
It's going to be dangerous.
Xeris has got traffic as well, but Nether gets straight out of the way there, so he's not going to lose any time there.
Gary Neville's exiting the pits, coming out in 5th place, which ironically puts him just ahead of Dwayne Davies, as Luke Joyner is still a lap down and has yet to unlap himself from Dwayne Davies at this stage. So, yeah, bugger for Dwayne Davies after starting a sector behind the rest of the pack to work his way back up into the podium position.
Remarkable.
Yeah, good effort.
Matt Williams a full minute behind Lewis Wedding, who served his pit stop, his first pit stop. Lewis Wedding on a 2-stopper.
The pace that the front 2 runners have over the rest of the field, I imagine.
Incredible. It is incredible. But Lewis Wedding's pumping out the fastest sectors. He's taken 0.4 out of Xeris in the first sector, but Xeris has responded through the middle sector. Or no, he hasn't. Actually, Lewis has taken a full second out of him there. 33.7 to a 32.7. So in this phase of the race, Lewis Wedding is doing what he needs to do to make this 2-stop strategy work, because from what we're looking at, it looks like Xeris will stop 1 less time, and Lewis Wedding will have to have the pace to catch and pass Xeris on the track.
It will, which is much, much easier said than done when speaking about that driver. Matt Williams is going to have to watch his mirrors a little bit here. He's had a couple of mistakes this race, and one more mistake, and I reckon that podium position is going to fall back to Nether, who's about 7.5 seconds behind him.
Well, he's about to go a lap down.
He is. Yeah, Lewis Wedding has managed to go Xeris.
Oh, bad part to catch him there. That's balked Xeris quite significantly through that corner. But he's through now, so he won't worry about it for probably the rest of the race, potentially. Or he might catch up to him at that rate one more time before the end of the race. Matt Williams yet to make his pit stop as well. So Matt Williams is also on the 1-stopper.
Yeah, absolutely. Zerus going around again, so this will be start of lap 16 on those tyres. Lewis Wedding coming up to lap Nether and Matt Williams, so Zerus will be hoping that they get out of the way as lethargically for him as they did for Zerus.
I don't expect that to be the case for Nether. He seems to be pretty attentive in the mirrors with the blue flags. And coming down to the final corner, the first corner, as we speak. And well, actually, where he's managed to catch Nether there, he might get a little bit of wash from the dirty air, and has probably had to lift out of the throttle a little bit there. No fault of Nether's, but just unfortunate timing for Lewis Wedding. But having said that, he still brought the gap under 12 seconds, and on the previous lap, took a 1.5 seconds out of Zerus's advantage.
Yeah, he is closing that down, but as you say, if he manages to close that gap in 6 laps time, and then they both have to pit again, then it'll be basically it'll be a zero-sum result for both of them, and we'll get to see a decent scrap between those two, hopefully. I'd be interested to see Zerus defending against Lewis. We haven't really seen Lewis behind Zerus, as Zerus is coming into the pits. Yep.
So he's going to have a longer final stint to the race, so probably opting for track position. Doesn't want to hemorrhage any more time, but he's going to take a world of pain towards the back end of the race, I should expect, when Lewis Wedding, albeit towards the end of his tyre life, will be on newer tyres, but we know he takes the softer tyres, so they may also be in a world of hurt themselves. So Lewis Wedding retakes the lead of the race, and we expect to see him in the pits in about 4 or 5 laps time, and just coming up behind Matt Williams at around about the same point where he caught Nether on the previous lap.
Yeah, Matt getting out of the way smartly there for Nether, and or for Lewis, sorry, and trying to get a sneaky toe for his troubles. That gap between Matt and Nether has remained at around 8 seconds for the last couple of laps, so neither driver making particularly good inroads into expanding or contracting that gap respectively. Zerus has come out 20 seconds shy of Lewis Wedding, which I would say is just under what a pit stop would be.
Well, he was 10 seconds clear of Lewis before he made that pit stop, so we probably expect around about a 30-second delta to transition the pits and come back out ahead. So Lewis Wedding, a little bit of a moment there, has to be said, and despite that, is still extending that margin over Zerus. So Zerus wants to keep that from growing to 30 seconds in order to keep Lewis Wedding behind him when Lewis makes his pit stop.
Yeah, Zerus driving through a cloud of smoke, but some lovely driver has decided to leave in that particular section of the track. It may have been Nether by the looks of it, as Nether has come into the pits and burns the rest of that tyre rubber off just for good measure as he stops as he gets down to the pit speed.
Yeah, it looks like it was probably a lock-up from the tyre marks left on the road, and Nether was the only car ahead of Zerus on the track in terms of track position. But now it's just Matt Williams in the way at the moment, so Matt Williams still yet to make his first pit stop. And we expect that to happen fairly soon.
Would expect it to happen soon. He's about 30 seconds ahead of Nether. So if he leaves it too long, then Nether's going to get some decent times in with those younger tyres. Zerus has gone off at corner 5, I believe. Hasn't lost too much time, about 2 seconds by the looks of it. But
you wouldn't want to do that too many more times.
No, absolutely not.
He has to push, though. This is a moment of the race that's quite critical, because you never know what can happen. If he gets the track position over Lewis Wedding when Wedding makes his final pit stop, even though Wedding is going to be all over him like a cheap suit towards the back end of the race, if he can stay ahead, then he just gives himself half a chance.
Gary Neville has managed to catch back up to Nether throughout the pit stops and is now 7/10 behind the Benetton.
Close.
Matt Williams into the pits with 32-second advantage over Nether, so we'll see how that comes.
Well, that's converging quite nicely for us as spectators there, because as we have just mentioned, Gary Neville is putting Nether under a fair bit of pressure, and Nether and Gary Neville both looking as though they're making good use of their tyres to catch up to Matt Williams. They were both about a second a lap, or a second per sector faster just before Matt Williams came into the pits, so Matt was struggling with his tyres, but he has emerged from the pits in front of them, and now he will have the benefit of that fresh rubber as Nether and Gary Neville come down the main straight here, and Gary Neville having a look to the inside, but he sort of thought better of it, but he was in the marbles there, and I thought for a moment he might go lock the front brakes up and go into the side of Nether, so I think that might well be a saving grace for Matt Williams, who will have these two fighting each other and not thinking about catching up to him.
Yeah, it didn't end up being as close as I was thinking it was going to be. About 5 seconds the advantage Matt Williams has over Nether at this stage. I think it was about 6 seconds when he was exiting the pits. So Gary Neville very eager to make that 4th position, and Nether just probably at this point hoping for a mistake from Matt Williams that'll drop him back into the clutches of Nether.
Xerus lost 4 seconds to Lewis Wedding on the previous lap, so that off costing him quite badly. But on this lap, he's 5/10 up in the first sector, so whether Lewis Wedding has had a minor problem or whether Xerus has just stepped up the pace a little bit, time will tell, but we're still a few laps away from Lewis Wedding's final pit stop.
Lewis, with a moment around that turn 3, just had a car began to slide, but he managed to catch it. It was very dramatic to watch. Lewis just doesn't seem to put a foot wrong in these cars. I don't know how much practice he does before the race, but he never seems to have these moments that everyone else seems to have.
Personal best lap for Nether, a 29 flat, as he's seemingly being sort of spurred into a bit of got the head down, concentrating pretty hard with Gary Neville up behind him. And 4th place as it stands, he still is about 5 seconds behind Matt Williams up the road. Probably just see him when he gets up onto the straight. He might see the back of that McLaren, but from a pace point of view tonight, he just quite hasn't had the pace of Matt Williams, and we'll be hoping for a mistake from him to get up onto the podium. But for the time being, he seems to have Gary Neville in hand.
Yeah, he does. That is the issue with being a consistency driver, which is something I aspire to be myself. It's all well and good to, make a few mistakes and make up positions that way, but if the people ahead of you don't make mistakes, then you sort of go, well, what am I meant to do? And that's sort of where Nether is at the moment. 6.5 seconds, that gap has expanded to Matt Williams in the last podium position, whereas Gary Neville is now all over the back of Nether coming onto the start-finish straight, so he might be having a go down into the first corner.
Well, Matt Williams and Nether matched each other quite remarkably on the previous lap. Oh, that's very, very tight. Nether defending. Oh, that's a late move from Gary Neville there, and he's not going to take advantage of that. I think he's lifted out of the throttle. It's cost both of them an awful lot of time. And let's just catch a replay there, maybe from the onboard of Gary Neville. Nether went to the inside.
Nether went to the inside to defend, and then decided he didn't really need to, and cut back across to take the racing line again, which I think threw Gary off a tiny bit. And then Gary just broke a little bit late, I think, and tried to dive for the inside to avoid. And
Gary was,
unfortunately,
I think Nether was probably driving in his mirrors a bit and was probably much slower on the apex there than Gary Neville was expecting. Gary Neville was just caught out. Nonetheless, it's still his prerogative as the following car not to hit the car in front, and he knows that. That's why he lifted out of the throttle and didn't take advantage of that incident, and he's still behind. Hopefully Nether's not carrying any damage from that.
doesn't look like it. They're both sort of behaving as you would expect them to behave. And Gary has, if anything, lost out of that. He's now about 5/10 down, whereas he was about 4/10 this time last lap. But that's probably going to change coming onto the start-finish straight. Again, Round 2, ding ding. Hopefully a little bit cleaner this time. As Nether
Straight
goes
to the inside.
Straight to the inside, yeah. And straight back out to the outside again. So trying to break the toe maybe, or just thinking that Gary was going to have more pace than he ended up having. Gary, he's taken that line a bunch when he's been chasing people. He sort of goes from the middle of the track and sort of cuts straight towards the apex instead of, you know, going wide and turning in. As
I think a distraction technique more than anything. Turn 3 is very difficult to follow another car through, so it's not that realistic an opportunity to pass here down into turn 4. So he's not too worried about setting up the move for the next corner. So he's just sort of maybe trying to get Nether distracted, which, I mean, seems to be working, to be honest. Because, as I say that, Gary Neville has a moment there, and thankfully for him, has got it back onto the track without losing too much time. But you can see Lewis, now he's worried. Now he's worried because the tyres are a little bit hot. They're overheating, and he's had a big moment out of 9, and all of a sudden, in 2 corners, the leader's bearing down on him, so he's going to lose even more time because he has to lift it out of the throttle, get off the racing line, and let Lewis through. And in doing that, he's gone off the racetrack.
Oh, no. Yeah, he did well to stay out of the wall with that accident. It was very similar to the accident that Dwayne Davies had, just with a lot less pace on it. Managed to stomp on the brake and turn away from the slide pretty quickly, which kept him out of the wall.
Oh, and Lewis Wedding in the pits.
Lewis waiting for his second stop, so Zurus is, where is he? He's about 20 seconds behind him currently.
But that gap was getting ever closer to that sort of magic 30-second margin that we were talking about. Quick stop.
Was about 28.5 seconds last I looked. Lewis Wedding is moving in the pits as Zurus is coming onto the start-finish straight, so I think Zurus is going to come out ahead.
Well, it's going to be mighty close. Here it is. Here it is, and Zerus is going to go through as Lewis Wedding up to speed. It's Lewis Wedding in first, or is it second? Zerus just pops out into the lead, but it's oh so close.
It is incredibly close. Zerus is going to have to, he's going to have to put his racing face on as if he doesn't have it on already. He's going to be defending until the end of the race at this stage. It just that one little error where he went into the gravel, that would have been that extra couple of seconds where he would have had a bit more breathing space behind him. As it is, Lewis has come out directly behind him, and there's going to be no room to breathe there.
Oh, absolutely not. At this point, Zerus's tyres are about 8 laps old, having come in on lap 16. So that is probably going to be a telling factor towards the end of the race. Lewis Wedding with brand new fresh rubber. Both probably on a similar kind of fuel load, so that's not going to be a differentiating factor in this race. But the tyre life, I would expect, would be, and Lewis Wedding has had the pace tonight, but he doesn't have the track position as we speak.
No, he doesn't. Zerus is not a tardy defender either. He will fight that position. Don't know how much chance he's going to have.
Oh, he had a bit of a moment.
Start, finish straight.
Didn't quite get the exit he wanted.
Goes to the inside. He's going to have that job done before the first corner, and unfortunately, Zerus is relegated back to second. He's not going to give it up. Lewis locks up the front tyre by the looks of it. Zerus is on the back of him. Might continue on for the rest of this lap.
And again, very difficult to follow through that long turn 3, and Zerus struggling in the dirty air of Lewis Wedding's Williams. He just didn't quite get the exit he wanted. I actually heard him in the background of from your microphone groaning as he didn't quite nail the final corner, and whether he had to lift out of the throttle, it just didn't quite give him the speed that he wanted coming onto the main straight. And Lewis Wedding had a tremendous run, and as you said, had the job done long before they got to the braking zone.
Absolutely, but he's still in with a chance. One little mistake from Lewis, maybe Lewis will be trying to put the foot down a little bit, trying to expand that gap, and will put a foot wrong somewhere, put himself in the gravel, lose that position again, and of course his tyres are going to wear faster than Zerus's will, although Zerus's are probably a lot more worn at this stage. Behind them, the gap between Nether and Matt has been creeping down over the last few laps. It's now 3 seconds. And coming out of turn 3, Nether can actually see Matt Williams before they start turning into turn 4. So Nether just bringing that gap down as Gary Neville has had his second pit stop.
Yeah, and that's put him well off the back there. So we don't actually know what the Nether might need to pit again as well, actually, because we know Matt Williams is only making one pit stop, considering how late he made his pit stop. But Nether is coming good in this section of the race. He does seem to have more consistency, whereas Matt Williams is maybe starting to lose focus a little bit, and the sector times just aren't there for him right now when they need to be.
Might have had some issues somewhere because his tyres are actually in worse shape than Nether's, who pit earlier, both on the soft tyres obviously, so possibly a few lockups or something somewhere for Matt Williams, which has taken a bit of life out of his tyres that he didn't need to spend. And that gap, yeah, just sort of equalising around 3.5 seconds, which is probably a lot less than Matt Williams would ideally like it to be.
Yeah, Nether a couple of tenths slower than Matt Williams on that lap. Or actually, maybe not quite 1/10 actually, because I'm very, very bad at maths, it would appear. But Gary Neville, having come out of the pits, is now about 45 seconds adrift, so they're free to battle over this final place on the podium amongst themselves, Matt Williams and Nether, as Lewis Wedding lowers the benchmark to a 20.9, so the fastest lap of the race, and giving Xeris no chance of victory at that sort of pace. Probably said, no son, you're not coming back.
Yeah, just he's stomped on the throat, hasn't he? He's
oh yeah.
It was a good effort from Xeris to have that track position, and if he'd been, you know, if he'd had a few more seconds, I reckon he could have held on to that position for a little bit longer. But
well, he had to try it. I mean, I'd like to see how close that would have been if Xeris had the practice that he normally does, because he's basically thrown the gauntlet down to Lewis Wedding and said, all right, if you're going to do a 2-stop, I'm going to try and do a 1-stop. Whatever you do, I'm going to do something else, and just change it up a bit, and I like that. It's got a bit of spunk.
It does, and you're never going to achieve anything by just aping what the guy who's beating you. You got to try something to shake it up a little bit. Try a contra strategy, as we say in the business. But unfortunately, at this point, barring a accident from Lewis Wedding, which I thought I was about to have to suddenly commentate on, as he copped a tiny bit of a slide coming over a curb, but he managed to hold it somewhat disappointingly. Lewis has stretched that advantage out to 7.5 seconds now.
Matt Williams also stepping up the pace with his personal best lap of the race the previous time around, and Nether back down into the 28.8. So Matt Williams responding to the threat from Nether at the moment, and looking pretty strong in that final podium position, and Nether coming under pressure from the race leader, about to get another lap down.
Matt Williams did just lock up into, I don't know what corner that is. It's the hard left-hander at the end of the sort of back straight.
Turn 10.
Yes, didn't lose too much time though, and Nether has had to get out of the way for Lewis, which certainly wouldn't have helped his lap time.
And Lewis already 100 metres down the track, so and a big moment there for Nether on the final corner there. Kept it out of the wall there because he went onto the gravel, and it's very, very easy to just spin up the rears in that scenario and put the car directly into the wall. And you can see Xeris just in the back of shot there. He's about 8 seconds behind Lewis Wedding, so it's not someone who Nether will have to worry about for a little bit. Whoa, Nether's having a big moment there. I say a little bit, now he's going to have to worry about him. He's going to see Xeris looming up large in his mirrors. And, that was a big moment there. Nether would have had his heart in his mouth.
Oh, sorry. Lewis caught Matt Williams at turn 4. Looks as if Matt didn't jump out of the way for him, and then coming out of turn 4, Lewis had an incredible swapper on, and I thought that something dramatic was going to happen, but he managed to hold on to it. So possibly a little bit scary for Matt Williams as well, just as a passenger driving alongside that janking Williams, but luckily both cars still all in one piece.
Yes, so That could have been something, but it was nothing. But it was another heart and mouth moment for one of our podium sitters. But 10 seconds up the road from Xeris. Now Matt Williams probably doesn't have to worry too much about the threat from Nether. Seems to have died away with that big moment that Nether just had. Now 10 seconds back, and Matt Williams basically making all of us eat our words now by coming home strongly in third place. Still 5 laps to go, so he's still got to do those, but I mean, the form guide going into tonight wasn't great. He hadn't finished a race in these cars, and tonight he looks good to take a pretty decent haul of points with a podium finish.
3 laps to go, in fact, as that's the
beg your pardon.
lap our leaders are
I'm
on.
looking at Matt Williams' lap counter that says 28, so yes, significantly less laps than I previously alluded to.
Luke Joyner's only going to have to do... Luke Joyner's only going to have to do about 27, 28 laps, as he's 4 laps down on the leaders. Nether has spun. He is perpendicular to the track.
Kept it out of the wall, though.
Don't think it's not going to cost him anything. Gary Neville is 20 seconds back down the road, so he's going to hold on to that 4th place. But that car's starting to fall apart underneath him by the looks of it.
Now Luke Joyner's 4 laps down. That could be a problem for him because the rule with the Formula 1s is that you have to do 90% of the race distance, and if I'm not mistaken, that's 30 laps.
What's 10% of 33? Would
3.
be 3.
3.3. Well, so down to 29.7, which would then be rounded up to 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
maybe
so
there might be special dispensation for. Maybe we round it down, but anyway, it's an awkward conversation at the end of the race. That's what that is.
It is, and to be honest, Luke Joyner would possibly be looking at some variety of penalty for that incident with Jaden Draper on the first lap anyways, so potentially wouldn't be looking at a fantastic points finish regardless, as Gary Neville was just off on the gravel, just making his last couple of laps a bit more exciting as he's got 20 seconds ahead and 2 laps behind.
Yeah, quite a fairly spaced out race at the moment now. The smallest gap looking like it's between Nether and Matt Williams of about 10 seconds, but having only started with 8 runners, it's good to see that there are still 6 of those runners left in the race, both retiring in separate incidents, but you and I were probably a little bit worried at the beginning of the race that we wouldn't have anything to talk about, but there has been action up and down the field tonight.
Yeah, we've been kept busy, which is nice. I was honestly expecting the sort of rule of thumb with the races I've commentated has been about a 50% attrition rate, which luckily hasn't come to pass tonight. It's been a 25% attrition rate, which is exactly half of what I was expecting. So I can't complain, and we have had interesting battles, specifically for 3rd place throughout the entire race. So it's been good, Stairs.
Certainly has. And Matt Williams just sort of buttoning off a little bit. Did a 31.1 on the previous lap around. So whether or not that was buttoning off, or whether he's just had a bit of an error, we'll leave you to discuss. But Nether was nonetheless about 8 seconds slower on that previous lap, and back up to speed now with a 28.9. But I think Matt Williams sitting pretty comfortable at the moment in that 3rd place position.
He is. It is showing that he's got his pit crew out in the pit lane, so I'm hoping he hasn't managed to underfuel himself or something.
Could we have a late race drama for him? The leader has started the last lap as we speak. Luke Joyner, is he coming from the pits behind him? That's a bit odd.
Just looking on board with Matt Williams, it does appear that he's being very gentle on that throttle. He isn't slamming up through the gears as I would expect him to. He is short shifting, so potentially some fuel issues, although he has managed to expand his lead over Nether by 2 seconds on that lap. So
yeah, but he's slower on this lap by, well, he's 4 tenths slower in the first sector and another 4 or 5 tenths in the middle sector, and he's again slow in the final sector. So it seems like what you're saying is right. He will only have to complete this final lap of the race now. He's on what is his 31st lap, but he'll do no more because Lewis Wedding is coming up to the final sector of the 33rd lap for him. He and Xerus will be the only ones to do the full allotment of 33 laps. So whether or not that's too much for Matt Williams, we are going to find out very shortly indeed.
He's been going back up to the top of the rev range the last couple of corners, but now he's back to short shifting again. So
Lewis Wedding comes across the line to win his 5th race in a row and extend his championship lead over Xerus, who's going to come home and finish 2nd for the 5th time in a row.
Absolutely, good effort from both of them. As much as I would have enjoyed a different result, it's somewhat pleasing having the same drivers in 1st and 2nd for 5 races in a row. Scruff is still 13 seconds ahead of Nether, and I imagine he'd be able to coast it to the line from this point, as it's all downhill from here. But not for him, as he is coming around to finish his first race of the Formula 1 97s, and not just to finish a race, but finish the race on the podium as he takes the 3rd spot.
Great job there from Matt Williams. He did a 33.2 on his final lap there, so 4 or 5 seconds slower than his best effort during the race. Nether 3 seconds a lap faster than him at the moment. He'll be ruining that mistake at the first corner a few laps ago, because Matt, with those fuel issues, was really struggling, and Nether might have been on for a podium.
Yeah, but obviously Nether's robbed himself of that with a very messy few laps there in the last handful of laps of the race. A couple of spins and stuff that if he hadn't had them, he would have been in a prime position to take advantage of that issue from Scruff. But unfortunately, it wasn't.
He does equal his best result of the championship, though, with a 4th place, which nets him quite a few points there. And Luke Joyner finishing 6th there, remains ahead of Nether in the points standings. 4 points that gap down to between Luke Joyner and Nether in 3rd and 4th place respectively, but Nether closing that one in. Luke Joyner finishing 4 laps down, and as we discussed, there may well be a penalty coming his way for the incident earlier in the race with Jaden Draper.
Yeah, and 4 laps down would have him finishing 29 laps of the 29.7 required. So I guess that would be an interesting discussion in the stewards' room post-race regarding how that will be.
Exactly right. We're just waiting to see if any of the drivers come through for a chat before we go off the air, and try and find my housemate's PAX thing so I can take a photo of it cut up, because he's left it in Adelaide and he's in Melbourne, and in order to get a new pass I have to send him a photo of his pass cut up in bits and pieces. But that's by the by. We've been joined by our race winner and 2nd place man. No sign of the final podium sitter, but we'll start with the race winner, Lewis Wedding. That was an interesting race from our perspective, because you and Xerus had different strategies tonight.
Yeah, well, I was meant to 1-stop, but due to a couple little mistakes on my part, I had to go to a bathroom break just as the session ticked over. And I'd been testing 2-stop fuel in the warm-up, and then hadn't had time to change my fuel, because when I got back there was only 5 seconds left. So I realised then I just had to obviously drive pretty hard, and it was sort of that towards the end of my stints, the pace sort of evened out a little bit, and I wasn't putting as much time on Xerus as what I would have liked. But obviously early on, when I had fresh tyres, I was getting that gap up, and after the first pit stop I realised I needed about 27 seconds. Had just about that much obviously when I pitted for the last time, and was just behind Xeris, and surprised he didn't put up, try to defend, but obviously I think he realised that obviously my tyres are a bit better than what his was, so didn't fight it. And then it was, well, I wanted to get a 1 minute 20 in there, and I did that, so I was alright.
And he certainly did that. So from a pace point of view, you certainly had the outright pace to win the race, regardless of what strategy you used. But nonetheless, the two-stopper, in your mind, that was probably the slower of the two strategies tonight?
I don't know if it was the slower, because I think I know towards the end of my first in particular, because we hadn't had too many cars out on track, the track wasn't really all that rubbered in. So towards the ends of the first stint and the middle of the second stint, the rear tyres and the rear end wasn't as settled as what I would have liked to have been. If I had have tried to one stop, I don't know how that would have gone. Obviously, I probably would have been a little bit faster than Xeris, but I might have even had a spin had I tried to, obviously towards the end of that, coming towards the first pit stop. So I don't know, it's sort of knife edge. You could have gone either way in the end, but it's probably two-stop being a little bit safer because I was on the soft tyres. It probably worked out for me better than one-stopping.
Fair enough. Well, congratulations on what is your 5th win on the bounce in this series, and now extends your advantage over Xeris to 15 points, which is a race win. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm sure Xeris has been pretty close a couple of times. Obviously, he didn't get to practice too much tonight, but I'm sure we'll see him probably get a few wins in the coming rounds, I'm sure.
For sure. Well, Xeris, we saw that you were getting up to pace in the qualifying session. It didn't take you long, and with a different strategy to Lewis tonight, you put yourself in the hunt.
Correct. So I didn't have any practice before qualifying, and then I guess I had to start getting up to pace during the race, so I lost a lot of time early on in the race to Lewis. I think had I been on the pace from the start and not put myself in the gravel, it would have been probably a bee's dick at the end. Definitely.
Well, it certainly didn't take you that long considering how much practice you had, but tell us about the incident in the gravel that you mentioned just before.
I broke at the 100 board instead of 150 metres.
Aha.
So I went too deep and lost about 3-4 seconds.
Yeah, so that was in the middle stint, a crucial phase where after you had made, before you had made your pit stop and after Lewis had made his first pit stop.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on the gap the whole time. I knew I needed probably about 30 seconds. Lewis said 27, so close.
Well,
and,
it wasn't much separating you when Lewis did make his final pit stop. So tell us about that moment when you saw that he was behind you.
I knew it was pretty much over from that point, to be honest, because he'd been on the soft tyres the whole race and low fuel as well. So he would have been carrying maybe 2/3 the amount of. He was about 2 seconds a lap faster, so there wasn't much point defending it.
Fair enough. Well, congratulations nonetheless on another second place. I'm sure you're getting tired of me saying that, but considering how little practice you had today, it was an impressive result.
Thank you.
No worries. And we turn our attention now to the final man on the podium, finishing his first race in the F1s tonight. Scruff, it was an up and down race there, and in the end it was you who prevailed in that on that final step on the podium.
Yeah, early on I knew Dwayne definitely had the pace, and I knew he was going to go for a two-stopper, so I backed off quite a lot trying to stretch the tyres out to about lap 16, lap 17. I was going to keep on pushing, well not pushing, but going on those ones, but I saw Nether came in and thought I better stop the lap after. And I think he caught me 3 seconds on that lap, so it turned out to be a good call there. And then tried to open the gap out again and let it come back down to I think about 3 seconds and stretched it again, and then saw he was having issues, so backed off towards the end.
Yeah, now we saw you backed off quite a bit towards the end. We speculated on the broadcast that you might have been saving fuel, but was that not the case? You were just backing off because your position was safe at that time?
No, I from about lap 10 was basically pissing myself, so towards the end it got quite difficult trying to get on the brakes or throttle quickly because the sudden movements were causing quite a lot of
I see. Not
quite a
laugh,
lot of discomfort. So
not laughing, pissing yourself. Actually, struggling with your bladder.
yeah, no, there was a fair bit of discomfort there every time I had to turn the wheel or move my foot or anything. Not
There you
quite
go.
the same as Brock Harvey had a while ago when he almost sharded down his leg. But
Oh yes.
not significantly better at the same time.
Well, maybe the two-stopper might have been a better option for you, but nonetheless, you still got it home in third place, which was a terrific result.
Thanks, Des.
No worries. Well, Madbird, what are your thoughts that you take away from tonight's action?
I was honestly when I saw that we only had 7 runners, albeit it went up to 8 when Jaden jumped in. I was dreading that race, to be honest. Des, I was expecting barely anyone to finish, and it didn't end up occurring. So yeah, I was spoiled for stuff to look at and talk about, which is all I can ask. I thought it was a cracking race.
Yeah, we can't say we were bored. That's one of Nether's favourite sayings after we've had a pretty good race, and have to say it's fairly accurate tonight. And that pretty much brings us to the end of all of the action that we have available for you tonight in terms of the week ahead. I'm just bringing up the thing in front of me because I'm not particularly prepared here, but here we go.
Yeah.
Supercars joins the Gold Coast on Sunday for the endurance final round of the Endurance Championship, and then afterwards Rookie Cup action round 7 from Velo Park on Monday the 29th of October, and then the Super Series returns next Thursday. So Hobbo, if you're watching, I'm sure you've been waiting for that for quite some time. Sick of Formula 1 cars. They will be returning to their normal Sunday night slot in the next round of this particular championship, which takes place, it's the Canadian Grand Prix on the 18th of November. So Formula 1 takes a bit of a hiatus, and then the supercars will return to Thursday night. So I guess that'll be the next time we see you, Madbird.
Yeah, I'm going to quite miss the Formula 1s, actually. I don't think we've had a bad race in them since I've been filling Bagsy's shoes, but I am very much looking forward to getting back to those V8.
Fair enough. I certainly am too. But that's pretty much all we have time for tonight. Thank you indeed for watching. Bye for now.